Hello everyone, this is the CRT Productions. This is a Dell Latitude E6400 XFR fully rugged military grade laptop from around 2009. I recently got this on the Goodwill online auction site, because it seems like they don't put anything out on the shelf anymore at Goodwill. They put all their good stuff on that website. So I've started looking on there for interesting things, and this certainly classifies as interesting. These laptops aren't terribly hard to come by, but they're still fairly expensive. I got this one for 120 bucks with the power supply and everything fully functional, just no hard drive. I installed a 240 gigabyte SSD in there, and we'll go ahead and power it up here. You can see how fast it boots up Windows 7 Professional, which it has a certificate of authenticity on the bottom for, and I used, and it worked perfectly fine. But this laptop back in 2009 would have been competing with similar models from Panasonic, the Panasonic Toughbook CF19 at the time, as well as Itronics, General Dynamics Itronics, offering from that time period. The starting price for this laptop was $4,344, and the one I have here is not anywhere close to being that model. Just for comparison, this relatively high-end Sony Vaio laptop would have cost about $1,100. It would have been considered a decently high-end laptop for its time. You know, Radeon graphics, Blu-ray disc player, Windows 7, etc. I think it has a similar Core 2 Duo processor to the I always want to call it Toughbook, but that's not a Toughbook, obviously. This one would have been pretty high-end. You would have been very happy to own this laptop in 2009, I'll put it that way. So that thing cost less than a quarter the amount of this thing. This is a fairly unusual line of laptops to find, the XFR series. There are only 3 of these, as far as I can tell, ever made. This one's the middle child of the trio here. Before it was the D630, I believe, XFR, which is very nicely themed in the Desert Storm style. I like the styling of it. And there was also a E6420, which basically looked the same as this one, but it had a second generation Core i7 CPU, so a little bit newer. That one would still be perfectly fine to use nowadays, obviously. This one's not bad either, with its Core 2 Duo P8700 2.5 gigahertz. Pretty nice modern Core 2 Duo, not one of those early, ones like that D630 I just showed you would have had. 8 gigabytes of RAM though. This is one of the very few laptops you'll find that was offered from the factory with 8 gigabytes of DDR2 RAM. 8 gigabytes didn't really become standard until DDR3 came along. 8 gigabytes of DDR2 is pretty difficult to find. Even high-end gaming notebooks back then didn't offer 8 gigabytes. That was just offered basically like as a aftermarket upgrade for people still trying to use slightly older laptops, trying to squeeze a few more years out of them. But this one was offered with 8 gigabytes from the factory. Another thing this was offered with was obviously a touchscreen. Mine happens to not have the touchscreen though. One of the weird quirks about it is that it has these weird bubbly formations in the screen. It's just some parts of the screen kind of separating from each other, I guess. Not 100% sure, but yeah, there's layers of the screen separating in there. It's not on the surface. At first I thought it was on the surface, but it's not. It's inside the screen somewhere. So also on mine, the track point is unfortunately broken. When it's enabled, it just shoots the cursor into one corner of the screen, so you can't use it. You have to disable that. But other than that, mine's pretty much in perfect condition. These things were primarily used like by law enforcement and sometimes just in really extreme environments. So in the promotional materials for this, Dell mentioned, what if your laptop was rugged enough to work on an oil rig in pounding rain and easy to manage as the rest of your corporate laptops. So I guess working in an oil rig was another intended use for this. So it has Dell's exclusive ballistic armor, which is this rubbery stuff on the corners here, all in very nice shape on mine, which is one of the reasons why I wanted this thing. So unusual to find one of these in nice condition, because they were usually used in really harsh environments as they were meant to be. But apparently this one wasn't. This thing has Primo Seal technology as well. They have these little marketing terms for everything. Primo Seal, which makes it dust and waterproof. So this was the most expensive rugged laptop of its time. The competing CF19 from Panasonic was a little bit cheaper than this, not much though. And yeah, the one from General Dynamics was a little bit cheaper than both of these. This one was the most expensive by far. The base model was around the price of those other two, but once you added up the other features, and the one I have in particular is not the base model, this one probably would have been close to $5,000, while the other ones were closer to $4,000. Still not exactly a bargain, but you know, if you needed a really rugged laptop, you didn't have too many choices at the time. But one thing that's pretty impressive about this thing is that they were able to put that Core 2 Duo P8700 in here. The Panasonic Toughbooks always had ultra low power processors. This one just has a standard mobile Core 2 Duo though, and they say that you can use it in temperatures ranging between -20 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty crazy, especially considering it's not a low power processor. That's thanks to Dell's Quad Cool thermal management system, which you can see there, the little CPU vent. I've only heard it kick in one time when I was playing some 1080p video on it, and it is very loud. So I'm not sure which one would be more unbearable at that point, the 120 degree heat or the sound from the fan of this thing. Now of course when you're doing a video of a rugged laptop, people expect the usual tests of its ruggedness, like punching the screen or, you know, throwing it off a 4-story building. Fortunately, I don't have to do that with this one. As I said, it's in really nice cosmetic condition, and just because of how unusual that is, you know, I mean, this thing is tough. I'm not worried about breaking it necessarily. I don't really want to mess it up because it's so unusual to find one of these in such nice cosmetic condition. I'm not going to do any of that. Fortunately though, I really don't have to. These guys took care of it 10 years ago, and this thing would have still been quite expensive. They took it, I think that's a Chevy Suburban, isn't it? That's a pretty large car. I think I could have found a smaller car to do that with, but whatever. I also like the part where he just, it's in a second here, he punches the crap out of the screen. That's a good one. This is the E6400, but it's basically the same as this one. So there you go. Oh, okay. He pulled the hammer out then. So we'll take a look at some of the things that it has. Obviously it has the ubiquitous handle that all rugged laptops have. This one is a collapsible one, so you can push it back in when you don't need it, and when you do need it, it'll pop back out like that. Buried in a really weird spot down here though is an SD card slot behind this door, and these doors unfortunately are just little rubber pieces that swing out like that. They're not on a real hinge, they're just rubber pieces that bend, so that'll eventually break off, but so far all of them on this one are intact. The SD card slot is buried down in there, recessed into the body. Of course, fingerprint reader on top. On the side here it's got the X-Bay. Of course, you know, when your laptops are this expensive, you have to have a special marketing term for everything. This has a few things underneath it here. Got the PC card slot. It has a FireWire port as well, and this looks like it's something, but I don't think it is. It's just a blank little slot there. It's got the DVD drive. It's one of these fancy ones as well. There you can see it's a compact disc, rewritable, ultra speed DVD plus RW multi recorder. That is what the DVD drive is there. Push that back in, and this thing does have a full-size SIM slot, as you could imagine for a laptop this time period and this spec. It does have a SIM card slot. This came standard with a built-in GPS, but you could also use 3G data with it. You could access 3G data and use that with the GPS, and of course to access the internet. So that would have been pretty cool back in the day. That was, I think, like $800 to have that added on. Obviously 3G doesn't exist anymore, so don't have to worry about that. It's got two USB 2.0 slots, a wireless card enabler that enables all of the wireless stuff, including Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, everything. That disables everything and enables it. It's got this button here, which I haven't been able to figure out what that does. I'm not sure if that's like for a hotspot or something. Could have had something to do with the data. I'm not really sure, but as far as I can tell, when I push it, it doesn't do anything right now, the way I have the computer set up anyway. So, yeah, of course, headphone jacks and headphone and microphone jacks. The bottom does contain a docking station slot right there. It was a standard one for Dell at the time. It wasn't anything special right there. And we have the very complicated process of the battery release. I'm not going to release the battery, but this one did include a battery that works. It was an aftermarket Rayovac battery, funny enough. And yeah, it still works, holds a couple hours of charge, so that was fortunate. Didn't have to buy a battery for this thing. Of course, it has Ethernet and a fax modem right there, and another one of those flip-out plastic doors. And over here, it is one of the very, very few laptops at this time that would have had a display port. Very rare to see on a laptop from this era, and the charging jack. And it's one thing to consider if you're thinking about getting one of these. They are pretty hard to find, but if you do find one, definitely inquire about the charging port. These are notorious for being knocked out. They're not secured very well. And one of the first results, if you Google this laptop, just the model number of it, is how to reinforce the power jack. That was something I noticed. So this one's fine on mine, but if you're thinking about getting one of these, definitely see if they have a picture of it. Ask them if that's all good. And over here, we've got some more USB ports. We got a USB port and a eSATA port, of course, because why wouldn't you have that? And a VGA video out. It has the CPU vent. This thing's really picky about when it enables the fan in there. It only does that when it's under a heavy load. I've heard it only engage this one time. It's really loud, but you know, whatever. It's a rugged laptop. Who cares? And here's where the hard drive goes. I'm not going to pull that out, obviously, while it's on, but the hard drive caddy is pretty simple in this thing. So if you find one that doesn't include the caddy, I wouldn't sweat it too much. All it is really is just a little handle that pulls it out. Here's a quick little test showing some 1080p video I recorded a while back on this laptop here. As you can see there, plays it perfectly clearly, and I will show that it is indeed 1080p. As you can see there, we can uncheck always fit the screen. It is larger than the resolution of this display. So yeah, you know, these speakers are what they are. I mean, these types of laptops aren't designed for audiophiles, obviously. These speakers don't sound bad. They don't sound amazing. They work. They're good, fairly loud. I like that they're top firing though. Some laptops have the speakers down here on the front, or sometimes even on the bottom. And obviously that's going to, in certain cases, unless you're using it like this on a table or something, it's going to drown out the audio to a degree. But the top firing, you're generally not going to have any obstructions there. So there you have it. I'll give you a little quick demonstration of the keyboard, because the keyboard is pretty nice on this thing as well. I'll give you a little demonstration of what that sounds like, and that will be it for this video. I thank you for watching.